Number 5 wants us to solve. Okay, so to solve this one, I would use a quadratic formula because completing the square seems more complicated than it needs to be. So I'm going to use my quadratic formula. So I'm going to write it up here, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So in this case, here's my a, here's my c. There's no b, so my b has to equal 0. That makes it super easy. Negative b is just a 0 plus or minus 0 squared minus 4 times my a, which is 100, times my c, which is an 81, all over 2 times my a. I'm going to plug it into the calculator. What is 0 squared minus 4 times 100 times 81? Negative 32400. So my 0 can disappear, that doesn't do anything. So I have a plus or minus the square root of negative 32400 all over 200. Okay, simplify this down. Okay, what can I divide? Well, we already know that that is 4 times 100 times 81. Guys, all of those are perfect squares. Do you guys see that? They're all perfect squares. So that is 4 times 100 times 81. They're all perfect. So when it pulls out, I have a plus or minus 2. The 100 comes out as a 10. That comes out as a 9. All over 200. And I can type that into my calculator. What is parenthesis 2 times 10 times 9 divided by 200? 9/10. So I'm looking for plus or minus 9/10. My answer is D. Solve. Looks like we're using the quadratic formula. Let's do a couple of things. I'm going to move my 30x over here by subtracting it. So I end up with negative 25x squared minus 30x plus 5 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula again. I'm just going to plug it straight in. So my b is a negative 30. Well, it asks for negative b, so negative of a negative 30 is a positive 30 plus or minus the square root of something over 2 times a. Well, my a is negative 25, so that's all over a negative 50. And on the inside, I have my b squared, so that's negative 30 squared minus 4 times my a, which is negative 25, times my c, which is a positive 5. I'm going to type that whole stream into my calculator. Parenthesis, negative 30 squared minus 4 parenthesis, negative 25 parenthesis 5. 1400. So 30 plus or minus the square root of 1400 over negative 50. Well, 1400 I know is 100 times 14, because that's pretty easy. 100 is perfect, so that will come out. 14 is really a 2 and a 7. That's unhelpful. So I end up with 30 plus or minus 10, because that's how the 100 pulled out. Square root of 14 all over negative 50. So let's look at my options. They all have a square root of 14 and a plus and a minus. So that seems to be pretty even. But we have a 10, a 50, and a 30. Well, those can all be divided by 10. So I should have a 3, and it's positive. So C is out. A is out. I'm left with B or D, and the only difference is the bottom number. We divided by 10, so we should have a 5. Ooh, but it's a negative 5. Uh-oh. So in all actuality, it's either A or C, because the negative and the 5 moved up. So it should be a negative 3, and we should have a 5 on the bottom. The answer is actually A, because that -5 turns this into a -3. Okay, this blank confused everybody. We're just distributing. What is CI times A? Well, they're no numbers, so we can just list all the letters, A, C, and I. What is CI times BI? So that's plus B times C times I, if you really want to do that. Well, I times I is really I squared, which we know is -1. So we end up with ACI minus BC, because that turned into a -1, which made it negative. So let's look at our options. We're looking for an ACI to be positive. A's out. B doesn't have an ACI, but both of these have an ACI. And then we ended up with a negative BC because the I squared turned it negative. So that would be D. Number 8. Solve. Oh, this is already in your squared thing. So this has already been done into a completing the square situation. So all we have to do is take the square root of both sides. So we end up with, I'm going to do it over here, 10x minus 3, that was what was in the parentheses, equals the square root of 55. Well, the good news is that that's in every answer. So all we have to do is solve for x. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. We get 10x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 55. Divide everything by 10. X equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 55 over 10. D and A are out. They're not over 10. And is it a positive 3 in front or a negative? It ended up being positive, so my answer is C. Number 9, which of the following quadratic equations has no real solutions? Again, so we're using b squared minus 4ac as our test. So if I rewrite A, B, C, D, plugging them into this, b squared, so that is a -4 squared minus 4 times my A, which is 2, times my C, which is 3. What will that get me? Can honestly do this down all the way and just plug in. On B, my B is 3, my A is 1, my C is -5. For C, my B is 4, my A is 4, my C is 1. On D, my B is -6, my A is 1, and my C is -2. I'm just going to plug them all into my calculator. Parenthesis -4 squared minus 4 parenthesis 2 parenthesis 3 -8, which I want to say is the answer, but let's just double check. Let's do B. Parenthesis 3 squared minus 4 parenthesis 1 parenthesis -5, enter, positive 29. Parenthesis 4 squared minus 4 parenthesis 4 parenthesis 1 0. And D is parenthesis -6 squared minus 4 parenthesis 1 4 parenthesis 1 parenthesis -2, positive 44. We're looking for no real solutions. We want to know, where is this less than 0? Where is it negative? The answer is A.